happily joined by some experts on our panel. But facilitating this discussion is Maggie from WWF, so Worldwide Fund, and she'll be our main facilitator today. She'll walk you through the workshop. So we'll run through the opening remarks, and then we'll have some wonderful presentations from our experts, Abigail from SOS Thailand, Mark Zorns from Winnow, and Chef DK from Hong Kong. And we'll be tackling 3 subtopics that we'll bring together in the end to really address the question of how we achieve the zero waste kitchen. So Mark will be looking at measurement and its importance in reducing food waste. Abigail will be looking at downstream solutions. So when food has value still and doesn't have to end up into the bin. And of course, Chef DK will be looking at how are we maximizing the raw products that we're using, right? So from nose to tail cooking and maximizing the raw products. From there, we'll break up into these groups and have a little, about half an hour to discuss these subtopics, and then come back in the end and really put together a plan and a path on how we can achieve this zero food waste kitchen in the future. So I will hand it over. Geraldine, would you like to also say something?
Sure. So I'll just stand here. Hi everyone, my name is Geraldine Wu. I'm with the Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center here at the Sasin School of Management. So at Sasin, which is the leading business school, we try to promote innovation, sustainability, partnerships throughout Thailand. But I think this is the first time we've worked with a group of chefs, so really excited to be part of the Zero Food Waste initiative and try to help this workshop this afternoon. So we'll hand it to Maggie, who's the market transformation leader of WWF Singapore.
Thank you so much, everybody. So just met some of you just now, and thank you for the people who actually are not from town. Am I not loud enough? Can you hear me better like this? Mic or no mic? No mic? No mic? Better? Yeah, I think so too. So I can walk around and point at you guys when I want questions answered. So a couple of you just asked me what the WWF is doing. First of all, can I ask who actually does not know WWF? Please put up your hand. I'm not going to shame you. Don't worry. Please let me know if you don't know WWF. Do you watch wrestling? You should know WWF, right? Yeah. So we wrestle with pandas. That's what we do. Okay. And unfortunately, we've retired from that. So WWF is actually an environmental organization. So we do not just look at wildlife, okay, contrary to popular belief. That was where the name came from, but now we're called Worldwide Fund for Nature. And in the US and Canada, we're still called World Wildlife Fund, okay? So we look at pretty much everything to do with the environment. A very depressing slide, but I promise that nothing will be more depressing than this after this, okay? So we actually specialize on the environment, obviously, and we look at the state of the current environment compared with the 1970s. Why the 1970s? That was when the first report, the Living Planet report, was published. And that was also when the organization was founded and was quite new back then. If you know who the Queen of England is, her husband was one of the founders of WWF. So it's quite a long time ago. We compared 1970 as the baseline to 2016. That was the last report. The next one is about to come out in about a month or so. We know that about 60% of the planet's natural resources are completely gone. Gone as in they're not renewable. They're not just temporarily taken out of the seasons. They're gone. We cannot recover them. And so this actually sets the tone for why we have to look at food waste. Okay? If you look at the world's resources, it doesn't make sense anymore because we're throwing so much away. And so if we need certain things, for example, fresh water, it makes sense for us to actually keep using it and make sure that the resources are kept in good place. But for food, it never makes sense to be thrown away. There's someone's creation, your heartfelt creation for all of us, and they shouldn't be wasted like that. It belongs to a mouth, and hopefully a human mouth. The next one is coming up, so I really urge you to take a look at this. If people inside your facilities or at your organization do not believe this, show them this report, okay? Show them why we need to curb food waste now. So how much food are we actually throwing away? If we look at Thailand's terms, Thailand's GDP last year was about roughly about 455 billion US dollars. That's a lot of money. You worked very hard for it last year. So to put into perspectives, the world threw away 2 times of Thailand's GDP just last year in food only. That's very scary. So this includes food that's post-harvest, so fresh fruits that just completely went spoiled right after without being touched, or food after serving to restaurant goers. These are food being scraped off the plates that you carefully plated. That's not a pretty sight, and no one wants that. And if you look at food waste, not only are they wasteful because of the environment, it's also wasteful because of people. There are many people who are waiting to be fed, okay? Not anywhere else, but also in Thailand as well. We're going to go through how we can actually recover some of that food and give it to people who need them in a bit. Not by me, but by someone else. So we know that if we recover all the food that's wasted, we can definitely feed every single mouth on this planet. So we can solve world hunger just by recovering food waste. That's quite easy, huh? And not just wasteful, it's also harmful for the environment. So who actually thinks that Thailand's weather has been messed up now? The weather has changed. Who noticed that? Okay, I haven't because I haven't lived here yet. So we know that the patterns are now getting more and more off. Okay, before you expected rain at certain seasons, and now it's gone off. People say it's El Nino or La Nina, but then it never came back. It never went back to the original state. And this is because of climate change. So we know that climate change is real, contrary to what Trump says, right? It's not made up. All the scientists believe that. And why is climate change such a big deal? So the second biggest problem of climate change is actually agriculture. Okay, planting food for animals, for ourselves. That is the biggest, second biggest greenhouse gas emission. But we need agriculture, of course. We need to feed all these mouths. So that's why we need agriculture. But do we need all of that when we throw away so much? That is my biggest question. The first greenhouse gas emitter is actually energy making. So we need energy for the lights. We need energy for this mic. Okay? We need energy for the air conditioning you're enjoying. So that part, we're also working on at WWF. But what you can actually start on today is the second one, agriculture. How can we make it more efficient, more effective, so that we can actually serve all the food that's being grown to people who need them, and animals as well? So if we look at just greenhouse gas emission, okay, if we think of it as a country, so all the world's carbon emission from food waste alone, put into one country, okay? Think of it as a country. It's actually number 3 on the list after the US and after China and the US. So China is still number 1 greenhouse gas emitter in the world, okay? So it makes sense because they have so many people, right? And then number 2 is the United States. You know that it's a developed country and there are quite a fair bit of people, a fair amount of people from there. Number 3 is food waste. That's unacceptable, okay? So this is one of the key facts I would like you to remember if people ask you why food waste needs to be eliminated. First of all, that shouldn't even be a question because most of us grew up with parents telling us that you shouldn't waste food, right? Especially as an Asian, my mother always told me that you shouldn't waste food because there are plenty of people starving, right? But now that we're wealthier and wealthier, does that make sense at all? And this happened to us. So this is nature telling us not to do this again, okay? So speaking of climate change, something I would like to share with you is that my hometown of Hong Kong has just gone through the worst typhoon in 35 years. That's as old as how old I am. Okay, I've never seen a typhoon that bad. Some of the concrete buildings were damaged. And so this is not okay. This is nature telling us that you gotta take back what you used. This is payback time. And so before anything like that happens, I would like you to actually change your mindset on what you do every day, okay? Everyone can make a difference. The biggest problem of all for environmentalism is that everyone thinks it's another person's business. It's you guys, right? The pandas, right? You guys have to do that. I don't. But no, we can all do our part. And today we're here to show you how. We have many great examples, and I can't wait for some of these presenters to present to you because they have worked it all out. All you need to do is actually to learn from them, ask the important questions, and then get answers, okay? If we don't have answers, we can work on them together today. Food waste in hotels especially. So if we look at just the accommodations. So when you go on vacation, right, you simply turn the lights on, turn the aircon on, and just leave it on, right? Especially when the key card doesn't unlock, doesn't reset all the power. So if you just leave it in, then we can have aircon and then we can come back to our comfy room, right? Do you do that at home? Do you leave the aircon running and then go out and then come back? Usually you don't, right? So when we're on vacation, we usually splurge. We usually just eat and spend and use more than we do normally. And that's just humanity. I think I do that a bit too. But when we're eating at a hotel, that's also one important fact, especially at the buffet lines, right? When I'm on vacation, I really want to eat as much as possible, okay? And the last things hotels want is for people to feel guilty about eating, except for the nice, delicious food that gives you the calories, right? That's the only guilt they should get. But of course, at buffet lines in hotels, we experience the same type of wastefulness. We can't have this happening. About 40% of food waste happens in consumer-facing businesses like restaurants and hotels. 40%, and this is mostly done in developed countries. For developing countries, a lot of that food is actually wasted post-harvest because a lot of that food cannot be transported quick enough, so they just go spoiled. But for places like Bangkok, okay, this is when the hotels and restaurants actually, food waste happen at hotels and restaurants. And so hotels are actually great places for us to learn because a lot of these hotels serve the same clients every day, especially when they're more remote. The people come back every day to eat breakfast and eat lunch and dinner. And so the same population, we can actually see how that changes. Because if we implement different things, we can try it out on different days to see how that matters, right? Especially around the same season. Food and Thai hotels, okay? If we're just talking about Thailand, there was a study that said about 83% of a 460 hotel sample, meaning that we looked at 460 hotels, and about 83% of that have a food and beverage business, meaning that you can eat a breakfast or a dinner or some sort of room service catering in that hotel. And the money from this kind of business can make up about 60% of the hotel's revenue. That's a little bit more than actually the room charge already. Okay, so that's a lot of money in that business. And why does that matter? That matters a lot because remember when we're talking about hotels and restaurants, 40% of the food is wasted, right? There in hotels and restaurants, right? So if we compare with the restaurant industry, hotels actually use about 60% more expensive ingredients. And that's pretty much the same as what people think, right? When you're invited to a hotel dinner, you're expected that this must be good food, right? Some of us think that, okay? Some of us think that, especially if it's a high-end hotel, it would be much better than an average restaurant, right? So more expensive ingredients. But food waste in restaurants and hotels are about the same in volume, meaning that even they're more expensive, but they're still wasted in the same amounts. So there was actually a business case, okay, to prove that it makes sense money-wise to curb food waste. WRI and WRAP, W-R-A-P, actually did a study together. And they found out that across about 1,200 businesses in 17 countries, okay, that the median benefit cost ratio was about 14:1. So what does that even mean? What's 14:1? That means that for every $1 invested in recovering food loss or reducing food loss, half of the companies, okay, so half of the surveyed companies, meaning roughly about 600, have realized a $14 or greater return. So for every $1 these companies spent, they got back 14. That's a huge return on investment. And so even money-wise, it made sense already. A lot, okay? Not made sense, but made dollars even. And so WWF, okay, now back to my organization. I keep drifting off into the hotels and whatnot, and you're still wondering why the pandas are in this kind of food, right? So WWF looks into almost every type of natural causes and also man-made causes that impact the environment. And now when we know food waste is so impactful on the environment, that's when we should act on it. And so WWF took the time and spent the effort on actually developing this hotel kitchen toolkit. Okay, it's a toolkit free for everyone to use. Okay, it's not something that's very generic. It's actually done after we partnered up with many restaurants and hotels and even cruise ships. Okay, so we actually found out how food is wasted throughout the operations, from procurement all the way to at the end when the plates are being scraped clean. So we understood how food travels through that flow and where does it exit the flow and become waste. So this toolkit is used to prevent food waste from occurring at these hotel properties. And then we actually ask them to donate or divert them to other places where they can still be made use, okay? Best if it's for human use still, or it can be for animal feed. And at last, if none of these two work, it will be in compost so that it becomes fertilizer, okay? So it makes a lot of sense for us all, right? If we look into the toolkit, why do we need to use this toolkit? First of all, it's free. Okay, if it's free, you should probably take a look first. Secondly, it's because it really saves you money. Remember how money spent on food waste actually makes sense? So this is actually for you to just spend your own time, which is also money for your organization, to investigate whether or not this toolkit is for your restaurant or for your hotel. And we also should help staff understand this. There was actually one of the main points of the toolkit is staff commitment. Okay, and how do we change that? It starts with you, all of you, becoming influencers. So I hope you can walk out of here today, and become influencers for food waste reduction. Because first of all, it makes sense. Secondly, no one wants their creations down the drain. Okay, we want them to be enjoyed. And thirdly, we want to educate others so that this can become something that's the norm. Nobody will waste food again. They will actually be they will be cherishing your creations much more, and also helping the planet while we're doing that. So some of the culture shifts movements we've done is to engage staff in their own canteens or at their own back of house meals. Okay, so when staff are cooking their staff meals, we actually ask them to take a picture of their clean plate. So every time they take a picture of that, they can post it on Instagram or whatnot, or into a group, or send it to your line group. And after a while, they realize that they shouldn't waste food. And they will understand that the extra amount of work that they need to do for food waste actually makes sense now. I am now a believer. I will do it myself, okay? And we also want the food police. So what that means is that one staff member stands at the garbage can, and when the staff are finished with their staff meals, they will scrape the plates, right? So usually they clean up after themselves. And when they scrape their plates into the garbage can, the food police will tell them, this is the food waste bin, and that is the general waste, okay? So when they scrape their plates, they feel very guilty because I'm scraping it in front of you when you're looking at me. So that's why they start thinking, oh, I shouldn't waste food because there's a guy standing there looking at me, right? That's the effect we want. So we can start from within. Start from yourself and then carry it on to the rest of your organization. And if we look at the results of this toolkit, okay, I'm just talking about the hotel kitchen toolkit for WWF. Already, okay, we found about a 17 to 38% of food waste reduction during their trial period. So this is a time when they think, maybe I should try it out, and they already see this type of result. Can you imagine if they fully implement the tool as part of their regular operation? So I'm not going to go through these individually, but this is how the toolkit is laid out, so that it starts from the very beginning when you have this thought of let's do food waste reduction, and then you go back and assemble the team, the dream team, and all the way to the end when there are materials for you to use. So there are materials such as this one. We can have posters like these. Okay, there are videos to train your staff, so you don't have to be speaking always. You can actually show them the videos and show them that how it's done in other properties worldwide. And also some scripts. So we've already written out scripts for you with the facts, with the hard facts from the environment, and also the facts from the money-saving point of view. And of course, this is actually something that's very close to my heart. Which type of food is actually better in terms of when it ends up as waste? Which ones would make more sense environmentally? Okay, so we all know that meat is much worse than vegetables if they go down the garbage chute, right? Or sorry, that's a very Singaporean term. Go into the garbage can. So it doesn't make sense for us to waste meat, first of all. But what about the other fruits and vegetables? How do we know which one is best to use if we're coming from a food waste point of view? Okay, so WWF has worked together with a lot of scientists to work out a list of commonly used vegetables and meat. It may not be completely applicable to Thai vegetables, I understand that. But for meat and other products, I think they are they're very much the same. So that you can understand which types of food would have a harder time to be reused downstream if parts of it were meant to be reused. And very quickly, I'll just like to show you some actual results in Thailand, here in Bangkok. So we tried this out with one of the hotels here, okay? And the price of average cost per cover, per person eating at one of these facilities, dropped from 161 baht at cost to 151 baht. So about a 6% decrease. And if we look at the weight of the food wasted, okay? Weight of the food that's ordered, it went down from 1.67 to 1.45. That's about a 13% decrease. So everybody is eating less food and costing you less without actually having any type of reputation problem, and you get the CSR aspect of it, the corporate social responsibility aspect of it. So this is an actual case sourced from Bangkok. Okay, and it's not talking about like American or other Western countries' point of views. And that's the end of my presentation. I would like to bring up this slide once again. If you remember anything, you please remember this as well. The Living Planet report is coming out soon, and this is a very good indicator. If someone asks you how bad is the environment, tell them 67%. 67% of the environment is gone. Okay, not to come back. And so we should work on the rest now. Okay, the report's coming out soon, so please pay attention to that. Together, we can make that curve go back up. It's still possible at this point. We call it to bend the curve. Okay, and it relies on every one of us here. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at this email. Thank you so much for your attention. And now I hand the time to Mark, who's actually going to talk more about the measurement aspect of food waste. Why do measurements make sense?
So, first of all, thank you all for coming today. Really pleasure to be here and sort of honored to be speaking in front of you. By way of introduction, my name is Mark Sorens. I'm one of the founders of Winnow. At Winnow, we hold a core belief that food is too valuable to waste. So what we do is we build tools for chefs to help them better understand what's being wasted, be able to drive that food waste down, and ultimately to help them save money. As a business, we really only care about one thing, which is how much food waste we're preventing globally. And today, we're saving our clients about $25 million a year in food costs, working with a large number of brands around the world. So, Maggie already talked about this, but in the world, if you think of all of the food that is either grown or harvested, and you look at how much of that food is actually eaten, around a third of that is actually wasted, which is a tremendous statistic in my perspective. One where, first of all, it just doesn't make environmental sense. But for me, and this is maybe where I have a bit more of a more core-held belief, for me I don't think it makes moral sense. We're asking a lot of living beings in this world to sort of sacrifice their lives, and we're actually throwing a good portion of that away. It also doesn't make economic sense as well. If you look at the amounts of food being thrown away, Maggie highlighted that it's at about $1 trillion a year. That's about 1.5% of global GDP. And so Winnow's on a mission to connect the commercial kitchen. And what we really want to do, and the reason that we're here in front of talking to you today, is we want to create a movement of chefs that are actually doing something about that. The reason that we care about the chef community is we believe that it's you all who set the culinary culture in the world that we live in, right? Clearly there's lots of food that's actually thrown away at home, but you all are in a specific position where people come into your restaurants, they eat your food, they get inspired for what they'd like to eat when they're at home, they get a unique experience. And if you all can start taking care of food waste in your businesses, in your kitchens, talk about that to your guests, we think that that has potential to spark a much broader movement. And that's really what we're here trying to build. So the view that we look at in food waste is we actually take the view of cost as opposed to the view of kind of weight. And the reason we take the view of cost is because it's what motivates yourselves, your managers, the business, and businesses at scale to start thinking about how to solve this problem. And I think one of the sort of interesting statistics in this, and I think just a little bit to tell you about these numbers, is that if there's food that, say, cannot be eaten, I love the sort of yields chart that you have, and one of the things that I noticed on there was, lima beans was a 2. The pods you really can't eat, that's food that you could consider unavoidable food waste, right? When we look at this, if there's unavoidable food waste, if it's bones, if it's shells, if it's lima bean pods, there's no value added to that. We're only talking about the stuff that actually could have been eaten at how much it cost the restaurants or the chef to actually buy that food. And it's about 10 to 20% what we find that actually gets thrown away, right? Very little of it actually happens in spoilage. So generally what we find, and actually it's be a little bit higher, this is a global statistic for us of about 700 operations we work with, but very little of it happens in the Western world here because of food quality and so forth. It may be a little bit higher, but generally you're buying food on a daily basis, you're able to use that food, there's a creativity the chef has to be able to put that food through. There's a little bit more that happens in preparation. What Chef DK is going to talk about is nose to tail and what he also calls tip to root as well. There's a lot of products that if we get more thoughtful around how we use that product, we can actually waste less and lower our food costs. I had we do a lot of work around the world, but one of the places that I was recently was in the Middle East in Dubai. And we were running an event where one of the chefs, Chef Enrique, created a food waste menu, right? And it was a delicious menu, but it was all from food that he would have otherwise thrown away for the menu that was designed for that kitchen. And he had this, beef cheek dish, right? It's a product that is, for those of you that have had beef cheeks, it's like, it's the best part, in my opinion, sort of that. And it was delicious. And it was food that most of the time, before he started looking into it, he was actually throwing away. Now finding out what they can do more with that to be able to bring that onto the menu. The biggest area where food waste actually happens, and this is mostly in areas where food's prepared in advance. In Thailand, where hotels where there's a stronger buffet culture, is just too much gets produced, too much actually gets put out. And this is one of the areas where we find that measurements add lots of value, because there's a lot that you can do in your operations to be able to reduce that without in fact affecting the quality of offer of your buffet. The food out there can be fresher, the food out there can be more efficient, and therefore you can spend more of your bot for actually buying the right products. And then of course there's plate waste, where people are actually taking too much food. And this is based on sort of about 700 hotels for what it is. Just to give you a sense of kind of how the technology works, the way that this system works is very simple. As staff throw food away into a central location in the kitchen, we customize the system to know what it's costing you to buy that food. They then identify with a couple of simple taps. It works in about 20 different languages and also has pictures to actually put a cost on what it meant to actually waste that food. And that's the area where the real power begins to exist. When you have your teams, when they throw food away, getting played back to them immediately what that costs the kitchen to generate that food, you start to incite a culture change. What we then do is we provide analytics around what actually is being wasted and allow you to measure that in real time. So I'm not going to talk too much about us because this is really about sort of a broader conversation, but I just want to say that we would invite you to join the mission on this in any way. Not even necessarily working with us, but to start thinking about what you can do with food waste in your kitchen, because it's you all that can create a broader change in the community. Thank you. And now I will pass it to Abigail.
Hi. Hi guys. I most definitely don't need a microphone. I'm Abigail Smith and I'm the Chief Operations Officer for a small foundation here in Bangkok that is growing exponentially fast called Scholars of Sustenance. We were founded in 2016 in the beginning And I first got wheels on the ground in November of 2016. And since then, what we've been doing is rescuing meals. So in the beginning, I was given the mission to increase food security through the strategic management of food waste and food surplus. And way back when in the beginning, this was super challenging to get hotels behind us donating food into our program. There was a lot of miseducation. There was a lot of thought that, A, nobody in the greater Bangkok area even needs this food resource, that the cost of it wasn't really worth it, that it would be overbearing for their staff to manage it. So we opened up with a small composting program instead. And what that got us in certain hotels doing was piloting, breaking down and separating food waste, which is a lot of work that Winnow does too. Because once you start to break it down and really, really look at what you're throwing away every day, then again, you're motivated to make change. In the beginning of 2017, we launched our edible food donation program. So this is direct recovery, same day, where we pick up meals and we take them directly out to communities that need them. And it's so simple, I almost feel silly talking about it. Sometimes I almost even feel silly talking about food waste, because the solutions for it are really, really simple. We just need to get everybody on board doing it. So essentially the donations come into us, and all my donors are either on an edible program or they're on my composting program. Most places are on both at this point in time. In the edible program, where we're doing most of our weight today, processing over 1,500 kgs 7 days a week in my edible program. It gets weighed and inspected and labeled and delivered out to recipients the same day. The inedible program that I'm operating right now is about 600 kgs a day. It's kind of plateaued because we really see more value going in on the edible side of our program here. And that process, it's direct out to local farms. So the meal delivery system is, again, extremely simple and extremely impactful, because you're having both positive environmental effects by not putting this resource into the landfill, and really, really great humanitarian aspects by providing meals to people that really need them. And then the cool thing about working with the five-star hotels, it's not just a meal, it's not just the nutrition. They're getting something different than they would normally get. They're getting something of higher quality than they would normally get, and it's special. We deliver cakes and cookies and things like that, of course. I deliver fruits and vegetables as well. But be able to give somebody a dignity of choice in what they're going to eat that day is actually a really, really powerful thing, and to change up the monotony of what they're getting. So right now I have about 20 hotels donating to me. Tesco, Lotus, IKEA are my largest retailers that are on the daily program with us, and a bunch of other schools and small restaurants. People that are getting this food, we're mostly pumping it into agency kitchens right now. So that's going to be orphanages, halfway homes for people with mental and physical disabilities, and homeless shelters throughout Bangkok. So going through that, it kind of goes through a three-point safety check system as well, which we really like. Our trained hotels box it up, my HACCP trained staff checks it, and then the recipient community is actually going into a kitchen where we've trained the kitchen staff on how to appropriately process these donations. And what you are about to throw away for lunch is dinner that night. That's how quickly this program works. So more on our food safety stuff. I started to touch on it a little bit. My staff is HACCP certified. I come from luxury hotels, food and beverage. I did it for my whole entire career up until I made this switch over. So we know these safety standards. What we're picking the food up in are brand new cooler trucks. I'm really lucky to have some really great sponsors that have cooling trucks on the road. So we offer all of that. We offer all of the equipment to our hotels to pack it and to store it. And we also give all of our hotels contracts saying that we accept liability. And that's because that's not offered here in Thailand, unfortunately, right now. There are other countries in the world that have taken the steps. Australia has Good Samaritan laws to protect their donors, and we hope to get there too someday. And to date, I've served 850,000 meals without a single incident, and we're growing really, really quickly right now, so we're bringing on more and more every single day. 2018 alone, at the end of the year, I'm looking at about 1 million meals because we're launching a few new trucks. We've done 450 tons of landfill diversion between both programs, which feels like so much, but it's really just a tiny, tiny, tiny drop in the bucket. Again, I only have 20 hotels of the 400 potential donors in Bangkok donating to us today. And one of the things that I'm most proud of, because 3 years ago I was most worried about, was would this be cost effective? Would this make sense? And what we found, that what the foundation spends, we're only spending 10 baht a meal, and that's everything. That's our pens to our fuel to all my staff is full-time and fully paid. And we're only spending 10 baht a meal. Most places average 20 baht a meal per person. So we're able to provide a better dish for cheaper than they could have bought it themselves, with us spending the money, of course, and with something that was going to be thrown away, that you didn't even want anyways. So it's like, duh, it's that easy, and it makes that much sense. So I know we're going to have a lot of time to talk and work together throughout the afternoon, and I hope that you stay on through the evening, so you guys can come to me with questions. But really, we want to see all the hotels in Bangkok and eventually all the hotels in Thailand donating their food to us, because no matter what you do to reduce it, it's still going to exist. One hotel in Bangkok alone gives me over 80 kgs of fruit from room service alone, based on their brand standards, every single day. That's completely offset the fruit budget for one of the orphanages that I deliver to. It's really, really easy, guys. Thanks. Oh, and I'm to give it to the awesome chef, Toolkit.
Thank you. This is what again?
It's just like a tea.
Okay, cool. There you go. You have one more?
Oh, yeah, call me.
You need to move aside for them to see the number.
There we go. Okay. Yeah? You guys got the number? Very cool. Okay, so my presentation isn't as fancy as Abigail's and Mark's because I cook for a living, like most of us. I don't do presentations. This is probably my first one in ever since I started my project. So I'll give you a quick brief of my restaurant. The restaurant's called Haoma, and we are based out of Bangkok. We are 500 meters away from the city center in Sukhumvit, Asok, and M Quartier. And I started a project where I was actually working with, I'll give you a quick brief so that you guys can understand better what I do. I used to work with Starwood Hotels in India for around 5 years. Then I moved here. I opened a restaurant called Charcoal. I was working with them for 2 years. And when I was working in hotels, especially when I was working here, Starwood Hotels in India is run by a company called ITC Hotels. That is the world's first leadership in energy and environment development hotels. All 12 five-star hotels, minimum 500 rooms, are LEED certified, which means that they recycle all of their water, all of their solid waste, and do not emit any carbon. And we're talking about the hotel, the last hotel that I work for is an 800-room property called the ITC Grand Chola, where it was being done. So I thought to myself that if they could do it at that scale, why could I, as a person opening a restaurant that does 60 diners a night, why can't I do that? So I moved into developing a restaurant. I actually quit my job and I started a food truck, which was the first sustainable food truck in this part of the world. I was recycling all of my waste. I was running on pressurized natural gas, CNG, and my gas inside was not LPG. I was running on PNG. So just basic things. I wasn't throwing away my water from the truck. I was bringing it back and watering different plants in the area I was. I started from a small shop house in Dindang. And I have a restaurant that does a few things. What we are going to talk about today is an organic, and so the concept is an organic and sustainable concept that builds from the desire of creating an ecosystem of itself with realms within a metropolitan city. What we do in the restaurant today is rainwater harvesting. We do solid waste recycling, composting, plastic elimination, and design elements to reduce carbon footprints within what our restaurant is. A few pictures of what our restaurant looks like. That is the entrance of the restaurant. So I've just put in pictures, not too many details because I wanted to talk to you about, and that's what I do. I try to deliver my passion through talk, not through statistics, because I'm shit at it. My maths is really bad. And we've got, if you look at the first picture, that's the entrance of the restaurant, and I've removed every wall that existed and I put in glass. So from morning 7 o'clock when we start operation until 6 p.m. in the evening, nobody's allowed to switch on any electricity or air conditioning. We use only fans, and we've got a natural water body. So if you look right here, this is a water body that's going inside the restaurant. So like the old school Mughal architecture, when we were designing it, there is a water body inside the restaurant that naturally cools it instead of using air conditioning. Moving on, the second element is the farm itself. So we've got rainwater harvest gutters all over. You can see these rainwater gutters on the side, the white ones. I grow my plants in them. So rainwater actually trickles through the soil, gets filtered, goes back to the next slide, which I'm going to show you the main heart of the system, and we grow fish in that water. So rainwater is naturally filtered through soil, which is actually the compost of the waste that we have from the restaurant. We compost it. We do not use incineration, we use old school techniques. I was just talking to Mark that I'm really old school, and I have no technology in place, but I have the will to move it forward. Within the restaurant, every wall that is there has been turned into a green wall. So every wall is growing something that is edible, or it can be used for increasing the oxygen in the area, for example. Then if you look at the main design wall of my restaurant, while I was creating the restaurant, there was just one tree that came in the way of the greenhouse. So we never got rid of the tree, but one big branch had to be removed, like a main trunk, like a sub trunk from there. So we cut it into small pieces and designed our entire designed feature wall through the only nature that we could have removed from the house. Moving on, in the restaurant, within the restaurant, this is our rainwater system. So as I explained to you guys, you can see these rainwater gutters in the back. I'm growing my rosemary, parsley, watercress, and whatever you can think about in terms of that defines the taste of the food in compost that I make and gets recycled and comes into these tanks. Some of the people who are here have seen the restaurant. Maggie has, Sam has. And so the fish is growing in this water. And we start the fish at tadpole. The fish grows. Fish eats recycled waste from the kitchen that could be given to them, not composted, like, for example, peels of carrots, peels of potatoes, etc., that we bake and then feed the fish, along with egg whites, which gives fish great protein. Eventually, we eat that fish. The fish lays eggs. We start the fish again from zero, and our guests who come to the restaurant are eating the same fish that is growing on the premises of the restaurant. What does that bring to us? They're eating the waste, which we don't have to throw away. They're giving nutrition that is growing all of these plants. Everything that grows here is by the excrete of the fish. And we're growing some phenomenal stuff here that when you come to the restaurant later tonight for the after party, you'll get to taste all of that stuff. And then this water is actually being filtered here, going back into where the fish are growing. Guests are eating the fish. So it is a closed ecosystem within a restaurant in Sukhumvit. Moving on. This is a few more pictures of what the garden looks like. We have actually successfully grown several kilos of baby corn within the restaurant. So in our earlier menu, we had baby corn. And we were growing our own baby corn, our own mint. Whatever you can think about grows in that system. Every single hotel in Bangkok or every single kitchen in Bangkok has so much solid waste that is being given away. We were earlier talking about waste that cannot be used, can then be turned into compost, and all of this stuff can be grown within your kitchens. Because all they need is a light coming on top of them and just staying there, which is a grow light. Yes? So what we're going to talk about today is, Chris earlier wanted me to talk about nose to tail, but I wanted to expand that a little bit further into nose to tail, tip to root, and what is the thing that drives a sustainable kitchen. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is menu planning, and in menu planning comes tip to root and nose to tail. Menu planning. Most of the restaurants or hotels that I worked for before never changed the menu. They cook the same thing day in, day out, against the season, cold storage. And when I was a junior sous chef at the Starwood Hotels, I was also the receiving chef for the year. So it was my responsibility to go to the receiving department when the produce came in the morning and verify that everything came through proper. And we had this huge chart that had a picture of carrot, that had a picture of tomato, and every produce that would come to our kitchen. And if it did not look like on the picture, we were supposed to reject that produce. Right? So we are eventually, as chefs, forcing the farmer to inject that hormone that makes a carrot look so pretty. Or the carrot that is being sold in the villa market, individual, each carrot wrapped in plastic, looks like you want to make love to that carrot, you know. Like you really, it's so pretty in the market, but that is, rest of the produce that actually came out gets thrown away. So now at Haoma, we only cook with produce that nobody wants. And we cook a tasting menu that changes every 3 months. We work with the nature. So menu planning, when I'm coming back to that, we change because throughout, like in Bangkok, in Thailand, there are 3 seasons. It's called summer, summer, and summer. But rest of the world has got a lot of seasons, right? In Thailand, the produce also varies through season, because we've got produce coming in from Chiang Mai, we got produce coming in from Phetchabun, we got produce coming in from Kanchanaburi and the vicinity of Bangkok, where temperatures are completely different. So when you're planning your menu, we actually work backwards now. We work with the farmer. We go to them and ask them that, all right, we're going to come up with a new menu in November. All right, what is it that you can provide me from November to February? What will grow the best during that time? And that's how we plan our menu. When we plan our menu, how we do it is that we do not look at dishes. We do not look at the final finished product. What we look at is an ingredient. And we base everything around that ingredient. And my sous chefs get an incentive of maximizing the produce from that. So if you come to my restaurant today, and any random day, you can check that at the end of the night, the maximum waste I've ever thrown out of a 60 packs dinner, where we do 11 plates per diner, that means we send out 760 plates of food, was 3.8 kilos. Because we used everything. We didn't throw anything away. So, for example, I'm going to give you an example in menu planning. For example, a beetroot. We've got a lot of chefs here. Let's hear some ideas about a beetroot. What could you do with a single beetroot? Anybody?
Eat it.
As chefs, like we're all chefs in the room. This is what in our next step. Yes, please, Sam.
Make a puree.
Okay. So when you're actually making a puree, so I'm gonna break it down. So to make a puree, you have to get rid of the root, the tip, and the skin, and then you make a puree, right?
Yeah.
Yes, for example, yes. That's why I was asking chefs. But thank you, chef. You want to say something?
You mean this eat, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
we
for
can-
example, how many different ways could we break down a single beetroot?
We can do the decoration.
Right, we could take the skin and use it separately. We could use the head. So I was just giving an example of a beetroot, or say example of a whole hog. So we have a dish in our restaurant called the Bloody Hog, where we use everything from the nose to the tail of the whole pig in one single plate. Every element. We do not throw anything away. The bones are being used for something, the skin is being used for something, the nose, the ears, the eyes, everything. Similarly, we do a dish where I didn't want to show you guys pictures of the food that I played, because you would think that this cannot come from nose to tail cooking, but I really want to give you an idea about it. So we do a dish called Stick to the Roots, which is a root vegetable dish where we use just carrots and beetroot and use every single part of them, zero waste. So now coming back to the idea of zero waste, coming on to it. I do not believe in zero waste, because zero waste happens in the kitchen. I believe in a reverse zero waste philosophy. So what is my reverse zero waste philosophy is what is coming into my kitchen, not what is going out of my kitchen. So usually when we think about it, or when I thought about it before I got really deep into this stuff, was what is zero waste? What according to you guys is zero waste? Minimum wastage? Minimum waste going out of the kitchen? Okay, so Maggie, for example, you nodded at that. If I already have, I ordered, say, a 5-star hotel ordered 500 kilos of produce in a day, right? And all of that produce actually came in plastic bags. What do I do with that?
Kill the guy.
Right? So how did I start working on a reverse zero waste philosophy? So I was thinking to myself that my plastic waste is not going down. How do I bring down my plastic waste? That was my biggest issue, because in my kitchen I have 3 dustbins, like what I learned in my earlier jobs. One is for plastic waste, one is for biodegradable waste, and one is for breakages, like in any other hotel, right? Red, yellow, and green dustbins. All right, so I have the same thing. And I was ordering, say, for a small restaurant, not at a 5-star hotel scale, but I was ordering, say, 2 kilos of carrots, 10 kilos of tomatoes, 5 kilos of chicken, 20 kilos of pork, and all of this stuff was individually coming in plastic bags, right? And all of this produce was then in a tote box, which was made of plastic. So how we countered this problem, and everybody else in the world can, is we went to Samyan and we got cotton bags, 100 of them. And then we started giving it to our vegetable and meat suppliers. And now our produce comes in cotton bags, just like my mother was getting produce from a vegetable market. In India, we call it a thela, which is like a bag in which everybody gets their produce from the market. There is no plastic bags. I come from a small city called Allahabad in India, which was one of the first cities in India to ban plastic use. And there are 6 states now in India, which is not a country, a continent, because of the amount of people and land space, that have no plastic usage in them. So if they could do it at that scale, we can definitely do it at ours. Moving on, growing taste-defining elements. What is that is making the most carbon footprint is small elements that travel the world and come to you, like microgreens, cress. Cress defines the taste of food today. It looks so pretty, right? All the chefs, the cress on top of the food and the edible flowers, they make the food look really pretty without thinking what are the elements, how it's defining the taste of the food. But all of this produce is mostly growing in cold temperate climates, which is in Europe or Japan, right? The produce that is grown, or say for example Chiang Mai. But if you're talking about Chiang Mai, which is 1,000 kilometers away from here, it's like getting produce from Laos, Cambodia or Singapore. It's almost the same distance. So getting produce from Chiang Mai is not really local. A truck is bringing it in, it is getting harvested today, it is sitting in a cold storage, it's sitting in a cold van the entire day coming down here, then it goes to a distribution unit, and then it stays there and it comes to you the next day. So what you think is fresh produce is already 4 days old. 4 days old fresh produce, to think about it. So at home we grow everything that defines the taste of the food in pots and in vertical gardens. So we grow our own coriander, we grow our own parsley, our own rosemary, our own watercress, our own borage, our own wasabi, everything. We grow everything in the restaurant. And it does not take a lot of time because I have nobody else to do it, and I swear to God I don't spend more than 2 hours a day on it. So that is exactly what it takes to be able to grow all of my produce that defines the taste of my food. Then coming down to waste management. How does a kitchen become sustainable by managing its waste? Which comes down to what Mark was speaking about or what Maggie was speaking about earlier. When we decide what we're going to cook for our diners, the menu that is going to come through, if we use certain cuts of meats, if we use certain plants, vegetables, fruits that have minimum wastage. For example, a lot of us are currently driven into using top quality produce, like for example, say Wagyu beef, right? And Wagyu beef is, there was a movie by, tell me the name, Leonardo DiCaprio, the movie about wastage of food that just came through. A movie by Leonardo DiCaprio about the wastage of food that recently came and was featured on the Nat Geo, that told us that beef is the most unsustainable product in the world. And right now, Wagyu beef is the hottest thing. Everywhere you go, everybody wants to eat Wagyu beef, right? So how do you actually design a menu that does not have these products in place? Are we really saying that guests would not come to us if we didn't serve Wagyu beef on the menu? They would. So that is a reverse process of how we go about it and reduce our waste. So this is what I say to people who come to home and I think about it, that carbon negative is a thing. You have to trust us. So if you actually come together on doing all of this that we spoke about, that different speakers spoke about today, we could actually have a carbon negative restaurant. Because currently we are managing all of our solid waste. We are managing all of the liquid waste that is coming out. We are rainwater harvesting. If we could produce our energy, which is my vision for my restaurant in 2020, we would go solar power as much as we can. We would have no carbon footprint and we'd be the first carbon negative restaurant in the world. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
So, echoing what Chef PK just mentioned, just like to say 2 words, okay? I promise you 2 words.
So what he mentioned just now, actually, we're hoping that it would echo with you before we split into the groups for the workshops. Just one more thing about environment is that Thailand is a great place. We all love Thailand. Thailand, unfortunately, is number 5 on the plastic waste in ocean list, meaning that of all the countries in the world, Thailand is number 5 in producing so much ocean plastic. And this has got to stop soon, okay? We're working on this at the moment from Thailand as a base at WWF. So we are trying to curb plastic waste. And it begins at every single step, actually, not just at the consumer side, but also in the kitchens. So if we can actually stand together and say, no, that we don't need all this plastic wrapping, it's just all going down the drain or into the oceans or into a bin at best, we can actually stop this. And so what Chef DK mentioned is very ideal. And we were hoping that all the restaurants can partake on this journey with us together. There's a campaign now called Eat Better. We are trying to send this across in all of Thailand. It is in Thai language. So if you go on Facebook, you can check this out. It's called Eat Better, and it's run by WWF. Not only is it vouching for zero waste, also for no plastic, and also for eating healthily, and also a much more sustainable diet. And a sustainable diet would not consist of a lot of Wagyu beef, for example. So we can all be sustainable and ride on that wave when everyone is more conscious now. So I will split into the groups into 3 groups, is it? And so workshops now. And we have the three zero food waste leaders leading the groups.
Yeah, so if everybody could open up their notebook that they received in the beginning, if you have a pink sticker in the first page there, you'll be with Chef DK. If you have a green one, you'll be with Abigail. And if you have an orange one, you'll be with Mark. And then we'll be splitting up into the rooms just outside here to get into the workshops and get interactive. Just to let everybody know, we'll run this till about 4:40. So